Hey guys, Zoliax here, and welcome to another guide for Airlines Manager. In this video, I'm going to be discussing the in-game efficiencies versus the real world. As I've said in my other videos, this is going to be based on my personal experiences and opinions. This is just how I view it. Each and every one of us gets something different out of the game. We play the game for different reasons in some cases. I'll try and be as balanced in my views as possible, and hopefully this will can be a helpful guide for you guys. So the first thing I want to talk about is just aircraft. It's a game about running planes. So the way the game works, we have access to the most modern aircraft all the way up to some of the most iconic historical aircraft. Now, in the real world, most airlines now run the modern aircraft, so 737 Maxes, A330, A321neos, A350s, 787s, and so on. And if you're playing the game to be as close to the real world, then that's brilliant. For those of you who are playing for the most efficient way in the game, these aircraft are very expensive for what you get. And there is a particular aircraft in the long haul category that is considered by pretty much every top ranking player in the game, and if you look at the top ranking players, most of them only operate this aircraft, and that is the Ilyushin 96-300, and it is down here for $110 million. Now, the reason why this aircraft is considered the best aircraft in the game is because for 110 million you get 300 seating capacity, which, and if you look either side of it, the aircraft around it, the highest there is 259, and you also have to pay AM coins in order to purchase it. To put this into context for you then, a standard A380 has 800 and I've forgotten off the top of my head now, 853 seats, and it's going to set you back 403 million. So as you can see there, you could purchase 3 of the Ilyushin 96-300s, get an extra 47 seats, and still have £63,000 plus the discount for purchasing 3 Ilyushins as your multi-buy discount that you get, and you still have all that spare. So it has the highest cost per seat ratio, and when it comes to playing the game efficiently, that's the most important thing. And a lot of the older aircraft tend to have the higher cost efficiency when it comes to seat per price, or price per seat even, sorry. So the Ilyushin 96-300, you're probably there sitting there saying, but Zoliax, the consumption is really high and the wear rate is really high. Now, yeah, you're right, it is. However, the cost of fuel in this game is so low that it's practically negligible. You don't need to worry about the consumption. It doesn't matter whether it had 0.1 litres per pax per 100 kilometers or 5. That you're not going to notice the difference really at all. The wear rate. Yes, the wear rate is a bit higher than the more modern aircraft. As you can see there, it is 2.7% per 100 hours, And if we go look at the more modern stuff here, 1.6% for the A350s, the 747-8 is 1.9 and 2 for the A380, so it's not drastically higher. But the other thing to consider when looking at the wear rate is how much is your maintenance actually going to cost. So for those of you who don't know, maintenance is calculated taking the base price of the aircraft. So looking at the Ilyushin, it will be 110 million. It's then multiplied by a factor that is based off the current wear of the aircraft, and that's how you calculate the A checks. For calculating the D checks, it's exactly the same as the A check, but it also adds in a multiplier for the current age rating of the aircraft. So because both A checks and D checks take into account the base cost of the aircraft, you're paying a lot less for the aircraft initially. Therefore, the maintenance on it is going to be cheaper. So, and I have worked this out. I've done a testing on this. It is cheaper to maintain 3 Ilyushin 96-300s than it is to maintain 1 Airbus A380. And you get an extra 47 seats in doing so. The other thing to take into account on for aircraft selection and that is the older aircraft bring in higher ancillary revenues. It's not a massively drastic amount, but it is an amount that you can just about notice. So for those of you who are playing this game to be completely efficient within the game, you want to be, competing for the higher rankings in a passenger term, the Ilyushin 96-300 is the aircraft you want to use. The other advantage of the Ilyushin is it has a massively high payload. You can go for a full economy layout and you will still have room for 10 cargo capacity. If you go and look to the more modern aircraft, I will go for an A380 just as a comparison example. If you go for a full economy packs, you will only get 3. So with the 3 Ilyushins that you could buy for the same price as an Airbus A380, you get 10 times the amount of cargo capacity, as well as the extra 47 seats, and cheaper maintenance bills, and more ancillary revenue. So that's why the Ilyushin 96-300 is considered the best aircraft in the game. The only downside to the Ilyushin is its range. So after that, the classic 747s are very good. So the 747-200B, yes, you have to pay AM coins to get these, but they are very good cost per seat per cost per seat. Yeah, I was correct the first time. Cost per seat is decent. It does have a longer range than the Ilyushin by 1,500 kilometers. So they're brilliant aircraft. As for the even further range to that, you are looking at, this is probably the only aircraft in the game that's a modern aircraft that is fairly good, and that is the Boeing 787-8. It's the better of the newer aircraft, let's say. So, beyond that then, scheduling of aircraft. In the game, the best way, or the most efficient way for an aircraft schedule is to have 100% of the schedule filled. And the easiest way of doing that is having a route that has a 3-hour flight time, 4-hour, 6-hour, 8-hour, 12-hour or 24-hour flight time. And the reason why these are the most efficient ones is because you can have a single route, and you can tailor your aircraft to that specific route. When it comes to doing the more complex routes, like the 168 hours, where you have multiple routes within it, it's going to be very difficult for you to find multiple routes that have the exact same demand. Because obviously, if you want the most efficient as possible routing system and scheduling system, you want your demand to be 0. So I think it would be very difficult for you to find 4 or 5 routes that add up to 168 hours and also have the exact same demand for economy, business and first class. You can just about do it with the 28-hour routes, because you can have just a 28-hour flight, and you can do the same for the 42-hour flight. But the only downside to the 42-hour flights is you have to basically use a A350 900 ULR. I think the 777 200 LR just about has the range to do a 42-hour flight. I can pull, oh no, wrong one. I can pull it up just to confirm that for you guys after I've clicked the wrong button. So if we look at aircraft, I'll just look at the A350 to start with. So yeah, you can do an exactly 42-hour flight, which pretty much only includes, a bit of America, really. Maybe some of the Caribbean. Obviously, there'll be other hubs that you might be able to use this from. But the most efficient way to run your schedules and your airlines is to have a single route within your schedule, and you run it at 100% capacity. Going back to the real world style, in reality, of course, every airline wants their aircraft airborne. So for an airline to be able to get their schedule at 100% is the dream. In reality, that can be quite difficult. And a lot of this comes down to time zones. I think you'll notice that a lot of flights that travel west are during the day. This is for like long short hauls / medium haul routes. Most airlines will fly west during the day and then fly east at night. Most airports shut overnight. They've got to have some downtime. And if we look at America as a prime example for this, because it's a nice easy place to look at. If you fly, say, just a random example, you fly from Seattle to New York. I'm sure the Americans will correct me here, but there's got to be a good 4-5 hour time zone difference. So if you can be airborne whilst the airports are shut, you're still making money. Your aircraft are still in the sky making money. And even a route that's shorter than that, like Seattle to Minnesota, for example, if you've got a 2 or 3 hour flight and then you add on the extra 2 hours time zone difference, in on the ground time, you've got a 5 hour flight there, which more than covers the closure time of the airports. And so that's what they do in the real world. That's what they try and do in the real world. Every aircraft wants to be airborne. Every airline wants their aircraft in the sky making money. It costs money for them to have it on the ground, sitting there doing nothing. So, if you're playing towards reality, yes, you can have your schedule at 100%. Sometimes that's just not possible. But, it is what it is. The other thing I want to add to this is passenger demand. Now, in the game, obviously the passenger demand is set as a daily demand, which again is why when it comes to the scheduling, having those routes that fit perfectly into one day is ideal, and it just makes it a bit easier for you to select your aircraft perfectly to fit the demand that you have. Obviously, in the real world, we have certain routes that will fly 3-4 times a week, maybe. I used to live out in Uganda, for example. Flying from Entebbe to London, we had 3 flights a week. And unfortunately, in the game, because the demand is set to a daily demand, when it comes to scheduling to a more realistic frame, you can't really do that and be efficient at the same time. If you want to be realistic and you want to fly to a certain airport only a couple of times a week, you are then going to be losing out on money for demand that you're just not you're not using up the demand on the days that you're not flying there. So that's something to take into account. But again, it's your airline and you can fly it how you want. But for those of you who are playing for efficiency and more higher ranking, you want to be looking at 100% schedule, 100% demand. I mean, you might have one just because of how the flights work in game, where it takes demand for both the outward journey and the inward journey. If you have an odd number for your demand, you will end up with 1 pax remaining for that flight, which unfortunately that's just something you've got to deal with. You can't always take 100% of the pax all the time. But for those of you playing for real world, if you want to schedule and you want to fly to a certain place 3 times a week, it's up to you. It's just you will be missing out on that demand on the other days. In my opinion, I think if the game was to shift to a weekly demand system, I think that would be much better for those players who do play to simulate a reality, more realism. Because obviously then if you've got a demand bi-weekly, you could probably fill your entire demand with 3 flights a day on some of the less popular routes, which is exactly what happens in the real life. Right. Finally, I want to just give a few recommendations for beginner players when it comes to in-game efficiency. Obviously, when you're early in the game, it's money's very tight, and you're going to be struggling to make money a lot of the time. In the real world, most airlines start off small, and it's perfectly natural for you to want to do that. However, in the game, the most efficient way to make money as fast as possible early is to use 24-hour routes and the Aleutian 96-300. Pick a hub. My advice would be to use Maputo in Mozambique. It has a very high economy multiplier, and it has a lot of routes, especially in Asia and Europe, that are exactly or very close to 24 hours flight time. Those routes generate very good income, and I advise you fly Aleutian 96-300s on those routes, as many as you need to fulfill the demand. That's, for me, has always been the best way to generate income, just to start your airline off, and then I think once you've expanded a fair amount, you can then start using that income to slowly, if you're going for more realism, you can then start replacing your illusions for the modern aircraft as you wish. Obviously, if you're playing the game for ranking and you want to be near the top, you're going to be using Illusion 96-300s. As I've said many times already in this episode, it is by far the best aircraft in the game for passengers. But yeah, I think I'll end the video there, guys. I hope that's been somewhat helpful for people, especially the newer players, looking at how the game mechanics work and whether you can simulate real world. And for those of you who are newer players who want to move up the ranking ladder as high as possible, that's given you a bit of an idea of the strategies that you need to use in order to do so. So thanks for watching, guys, and don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you would like to. Any questions, please leave a comment down below and I will endeavour to do my best to respond and answer any questions and queries. But that will be all for today, and I will catch you again another time. Cheers.